So here's how Genesis 18 begins. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them. So the passage continues. Abraham said, "If I found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered. "Do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah, and what does he say? Quick, he said, "Get 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it, and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd, selected a choice tender calf, and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. And while they ate, he stood near them under a tree. Now, at this point, we've really got no idea. Does Abraham understand the reality of who is visiting him? We don't know that one way or the other. Obviously, he shows great hospitality here, but this is what you did culturally. When you had visitors coming by, you opened your house, you opened your tent, you offered them a meal, you offered them hospitality, you invited them to sit down and eat. And so what Abraham is doing here is very consistent with cultural norms and patterns. But then the scene gets somewhat surprising and unexpected. Because they asked him this question, which you wouldn't have anticipated. "Where is your wife, Sarah?" they asked him. "There in the tent," he said. And then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now, Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah, what did she do? She laughed. She laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" So here's Sarah, right? She's in the tent. She's worn down. There's distance in her relationship with God. And along the way, she's lost a sense of wonder, a sense of awe at who God is. And so she laughs. Now, even as you see what's going on in Sarah's life, pay attention to what God is doing. Because I think when you pay attention to this scene carefully, it becomes clear. This visit was all about Sarah. Now, as you follow the story of Abraham, there are clear scenes that you can track where God is specifically talking to Abraham. But in this case, he is engaging Sarah. Even as God is working in Abraham's life, he wants to do the same in hers. God is in pursuit of her. Even that closing interaction, it's not meant to shame her, it's to invite her. It's to invite her into the relationship. You know, in different ways, I think the story of Abraham and Sarah is really this. It's the story of people learning the reality that God keeps his promises. And it's the story of 2 people learning how to lean into those promises. Now, I realize sometimes people will read this story and think, well, if I just have enough faith, God will give me impossible things. But that's not the point. Remember, as you go through the Abraham and Sarah narrative, they move back and forth between faith and doubt. In fact, not only does Sarah laugh at God, in the previous chapter, Abraham had laughed at God. They are works in progress. No, the point of this passage is God's faithfulness to his promises. And so when we get to the end of this story, I think we're confronted with a choice. confronted with this reality, and that is this. You can laugh at God, or you can laugh with him. You can laugh at God and allow yourself to be simply defined by those hard experiences. You can laugh at God and just allow the kind of the everyday grind and some of the unfulfilled expectations to wear you down in such a way that it just creates distance in your relationship with God. And with that distance comes a loss of an awareness of awe and wonder. You can laugh at him and just smirk in your own tent. Yeah, right, that God could ever be at work in my life. Or you can laugh with him. You can be attuned to the reality that his grace is pursuing you right now. His grace made possible through the gift of Jesus Christ. And as you seek to live in that grace comes a freedom that you can now live in. A freedom that you don't have to be defined by your past, a freedom that you don't have to be defined simply by your circumstances or the opinions of other people, but a freedom defined by a new identity that comes in relationship with him. And as you learn to live in that freedom, what you're learning to do is lean into his promises. And as you lean into his promises, you're recognizing that he will be faithful. I don't always understand the timing, but I know he will be with me. I know he is working in and around me. So in light of that reality, how do I lean into this situation as someone confident in the promises of God? And as you do that, you can laugh at the wonder, the miracle of God's grace. Because even in our brokenness, even in our missteps, which we see in the lives of Sarah and Abraham, he will be faithful to finish what he has started. So you can laugh at him, or you can laugh with him. And understand this. In telling you that, you don't have to stay in the tent.